We're live.
Thank you so much, Daphne. Welcome back to Senate Education on Thursday, January 27th. We have with us Jeff Fannin from the NEA, who is going to talk to us about a couple of things. Senators will recall last week's discussion about standardized tests. I just went back to look at some testimony from that day because I must have been a little confused. I was in the impression that Mr. Fannin had written to the federal delegation, and as he's going to share with us today, he has spoken to the federal delegation and followed up with them by email, but has not sent a formal letter to the federal delegation. But we're going to talk a little bit about standardized tests and possible steps that this committee may choose to take, maybe writing a letter to the delegation, Secretary Cardona, but we'll also have some testimony on this next week and hear from the agency. The other piece, senators will recall, Mr. Fannin was working on tuition relief program for teachers. We were hoping to get a sense of what direction we might move in as we take steps to make Vermont as appealing as possible for teachers, and also recognizing that teachers have debt, and we want to make certain that we can give them some relief. And we also have, I know we have other issues that we are talking about as it relates to anti-discrimination and other things. And while we have Mr. Fannin here, if there's any questions on any of that. So with that, Mr. Fannin, the floor is yours. I see you've sent us some testimony.
Yes.
So why don't we take a look at that on our, Daphne has, I believe, posted that. So why don't you go ahead and just take us through that?
Sure. So for the record, good afternoon. Thank you. Jeff Fannin, Executive Director of the 13,000 members of Vermont NEA. Thank you for focusing on working conditions of educators with an eye towards giving teachers what I call the autonomy to make their working conditions and their students' learning conditions the best they can be. We know that working conditions, along with salary and benefits, are the most significant reason why teachers decide whether to stay in the profession. So it's a combination of working conditions and salary and benefits as to why teachers remain. Let me start where you started, Senator Campion. If I misspoke last week when I testified, I apologize. There is, we occasionally meet with the federal delegation. We met with them directly, not at once. And we've only thus far met with Senator Sanders and Representative Welch to talk about the conditions in schools today with the COVID surge. That's in large measure what the conversations were about. And why we were there. Standardized testing came up in that conversation, but in large measure, the conversation was for COVID and situation in schools, masks, tests, you name it, it's all out there. That was the bulk of the conversation.
Yeah.
So, but standardized testing is part of that, I think. You know, we're in a COVID environment, and why we are, and I think that I said this last week because I reviewed the testimonies as well. Senator Campion and I talked for the group and about 45 minutes ago, quickly, and I wasn't sure what you were looking for, and I now understand where the confusion lies. So if there was confusion from me, I apologize. And in my written testimony here, I appreciate very much having the conversation with you about standardized testing and the wisdom of having that now during the pandemic in which we find ourselves. It's a federal requirement to have these standardized tests. It would require an act of Congress to change. That's the reality. But it doesn't mean perhaps we shouldn't try, and that's what we were speaking with and mentioning to the folks down in DC.
Let's just jump in on that, if we may,
sure.
Just for a minute, Jeff. So in your history, has there ever been a time when standardized tests were, put off for a year?
Yes.
Okay, when was that?
in 2020.
So so Congress acted on that.
I don't know exactly how that it came about, whether Congress acted. I think it was part of the FFCRA, the Families First Corona Relief Act.
Okay,
And so it may have been built in there to give regulatory flexibility
yep,
to agencies, and I assume that perhaps that's where it came from. I don't know the specifics of it.
okay. So it
No,
is, so it
there were
is,
no
so
standardized.
there is a possibility here. I mean, there is a precedent for it. Okay,
In last year,
yep,
there was more different flexibility, but flexibility nonetheless as to the accountability portion of the testing. So we had the test, but no accountability, if you will.
tell me what that means exactly.
It's a fair question. I'm not exactly entirely sure, but the
Okay.
reality is that when we have these standardized tests,
Yeah,
and it's what I talk about here. It's become a test and punish system, and has been since No Child Left Behind passed some 2 decades ago, and the subsequent reauthorizations of ESEA.
okay.
The
Well, tell me what you
accountability,
mean, just so I know, because,
the accountability measures
yep,
of the standardized tests were waived last year.
but you're not
So-
sure what that means exactly in terms of, what was waived exactly, like,
I don't know exactly.
Okay.
I don't, Vermont NEA doesn't administer the tests and doesn't
Yeah.
specifically do it. So as to the exact, what was
Okay.
exactly waived last year, I do not know
Senator
specifically.
Hooker, I see your hand up. Do you know?
I'm just wondering if we should talk to AOE about what that accountability means, because
Yeah.
I know that when I was teaching, if you
Yeah.
didn't meet a certain level, then you had to have somebody come in and work with the staff to bring
Yeah,
them up.
that's what I'm inclined to think.
This is kind of, you're on probation, sort of. I'm wondering if that's the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm inclined to think. Senator Perchlik?
Yeah, I don't know the details either, but it's that kind of stuff. Like,
Yeah,
if you get penalized for the low scores.
yeah, okay. So it sounds like there is a possibility here. I don't know about timing, but worth pursuing. Has the federal US, has the national NEA nationally weighed in on this also? Have they been sort of pushing for this waiver?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
And so
Senator Hooker, please go ahead.
Sure. So do we have, Jeff, do you have any information on the scores from last year? How they compared to pre-pandemic scores?
Senator Hooker, I know that I heard somebody in the fall say they were about to be released, and I don't know that I ever actually saw them.
Okay.
I'm
So
wondering when they come out. I don't remember.
they usually come out in the fall. So in other words, kids take them in the spring.
Yep.
You don't get them to the fall. And that's one of I think the challenges of the standardized testing. It doesn't help the students who took the course necessarily.
Yeah, Senator Chittenden, you had your hand up.
So if I'm reading this correctly, you said it's going to take an act of Congress to move on this, but would you galvanize this committee, this body, to compose a letter to our federal delegation to call on them to do this? Is there a rising chorus of voices to ask for a reprieve of this testing countrywide because of the pandemic?
Well, I think certainly, NEA has been pushing it at the national level. Yes, I think that teachers don't believe the value and utility of these tests. And certainly right now during a pandemic, it is not serving our students well, I would say, to take time away from learning, including their social and emotional well-being, and sitting them down for a standardized test that has little to nothing to do with them specifically. So I drafted a letter for this committee to send to the federal delegation in that regard.
Senator Chittenden.
Just to add to your argument there, Jeff, I would say as another one that's more important is there are kids that are missing so much school right now, and like this is 5 to 10 more class days for testing. When I talk to my lovely spouse, who I have to mention every time Jeff's here, for some reason, she would just love to have those days back at the end of the semester to catch up on all this lost reading. So that's the most compelling argument for me is let's put the test aside to let those kids have more teacher time instruction.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, we will have the AOE. And Jeff, do you have a sense of what the counter argument to this is? Is it just that people want to have some measurement? Is that sort of where things are at? Because I think what Senator Chin just said makes sense in itself. Is 5 extra days of learning makes a lot of sense right now.
No quarrel with Senator Chittenden on that front, right? We need every day that we possibly can. There are kids missing chunks of days.
Yeah. No, we know you're not quarreling with Senator Chittenden. I'm just wondering, what's the counter argument?
I think the people, people like data.
Yeah.
Just to put it bluntly, I think that, depending on who you ask, they think that, I think people use the data as a weapon to demonstrate the schools are quote unquote failing, which they're not. And so I think, depending on who you ask, you're going to get a very different answer. Some people just like the data because they like the data. Some people want to use the data for negative reasons. So I think there's a broad spectrum of people who would give you a broad answer to that question. And I don't want to put words in their mouths. It does cross the map, if you will.
Yeah.
I think it would be good if we could assess learning opportunities for students and not their take on a particular test on a particular day or series of days, frankly.
Okay, this is helpful. Please continue. Do you want to keep highlighting your memo?
Sure. So I think we've covered the portion about the waivers. You also were talking about student loan debt of teachers and how do we attract more people into the profession. I met earlier this week with VSAC to talk about possible proposals. VSAC has a number of programs that in existence. And the idea was maybe to tweak something there to a teacher model, if you will. So, for example, there's a nursing program that provides, I think it's $6,000 annually, has a work component to it, but it turns out to be a loan forgiveness program. Could that be tweaked for educators? That's something that they are exploring. I was expecting some response back in the next few days or whatever from VSAC. They're going to pull together some information and see what we can work on together. There are other states that do certain things, New York, and I think it's New Mexico. I mentioned the memo. Those programs try to incent teachers or students, if you will, to work in underserved areas. We could do that perhaps here. Something VSAC is not currently doing, so it's a little bit out of their wheelhouse. And frankly, I'll just say this, and I say this in my memo, I don't know that we need to get too complicated about this. I shared with you a July of 2021 NEA report about student loan debt. On pages 3 and 4 of the executive summary, the numbers are simply staggering, the amount of debt that students are graduating with, teachers.
So what do we do right now in the state for teachers?
You could just do that's what I mean. Don't over.
No, I know. What do we do right now, though?
How about a loan forgiveness? How about a loan forgiveness for teachers right now? I mean,
no. I know that. I know. Wait, my question is, what do we do now? We haven't passed anything. I'm wondering what in the past 5 years, what's on the books now is the question. Not what are we about to do, but what's happening out there right now?
For loan forgiveness?
Yeah. Anything?
Specifically for teachers, I don't As a state,
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
That we have something specific.
So we have nothing out there right now. So that's where we're starting from. Okay.
I think we could do better.
Oh, sure. From zero. Absolutely. There's no question. We can do a lot better. I'm just trying to, I think we can do a hell of a lot better. Yes, Senator Hooker.
But I just want to say that in the dark ages, we
Yeah.
did do something because I had my loans forgiven.
It's great. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it isn't a new concept. I don't think it has to be really complicated.
I can't agree
I
more.
think we can do it.
Absolutely. To be honest, I'm a little surprised there's nothing that over the past
There may be.
decade, there's somebody hasn't been,
I do- There was something. You're right, Senator Hooker. I don't recall why it ended. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I don't think that we should overthink this. I think we should make it happen.
Absolutely. So what we were just looking for is what that might be. And so you're in contact with VSAC. VSAC may be able to put something together. What recommendation would you give for this committee at this point? I mean, you as the person representing the teachers. We can have some teachers in if that's better.
Well, I'll say it again. I think you have to have loan forgiveness right now. That's what I think.
So just build into the budget is your recommendation.
Well, you're asking for right now. I think that would work right now. Yes.
Okay.
We've got a long-term problem of attracting students into the profession. We have a short-term problem. If you're talking, I think what you're saying is what can you do right now to help address the
Absolutely.
short-term?
These are not trick questions. I can promise you. I'm just trying to get right to, the budget. We're working on the budget. We've got budget adjustment. The House has the budget. I would think, and I could be completely off on this, that the NEA would say, hey, Brian, we could use $1 million in the budget this year to reduce teacher debt. I mean, I don't want to put pressure on you. I'm just saying, this is what I would say. If I'm a teacher, I'm like, Jeff Fannon's here representing me. I want to hear from him what this is.
I think I mentioned it previously.
Okay.
But retention bonuses.
Okay.
Right. One of the things we're hearing is people are not, we're hearing this dramatic increase, if you will, of people leaving the profession.
Yeah.
If you were to give them a retention bonus, if they stayed to retain them,
yeah,
that would, possibly address some portion of the people who are thinking, do I want to stay or do I want to leave? Oh, if I have a retention bonus, maybe I will stay. That's good for the system. We ought to think about that.
Senator Chinden.
So Jeff, I love retention bonus, but I also know every time I do my federal taxes for my lovely spouse, I get $250 credit, but that's been $250 for 10 plus years. Do you think it'd be just as interesting to work on maybe a state of Vermont teacher tax credit of a similar make in this budgetary confines that we're in? So it's not really retention, but it's a tax credit to everybody that teaches in the great state of Vermont to cover all their expenses that they don't always put in for.
I certainly think that would help. Yes. I mean, I think it helps at the federal level, and I think it could help here at the state level too.
So I'm just going to be crystal clear here and I don't mean this in any disrespect, but usually we will have advocacy groups who are representing people come in and say, hey folks, this is what we really need. And here's a one pager. We want X, Y, and Z. We want this much in the budget. We want this teacher tax credit. And I'm just not getting that. And I might be missing something. Is it the way I'm asking the question, or am I asking too much? Should we go directly to teachers? Should we have them come in? That's kind of what historically has happened in these committees.
Well, yeah, I think the way the school system operates, the state is not the employer of teachers and school staff. So I think that the folks, the advocacy groups who come to you, perhaps they're seeking state money, I think is what you're saying. If I'm reading it.
And if I were, I'm not in your shoes,
so,
but I might say, there could be a way to do a statewide teacher loan reduction program with a dollar amount, with something thought out. I mean, if you're saying, hey, you guys do this, that's fine, but I don't want to lowball you. I would think that you would come in and maybe shoot for the moon on this one and say, hey, I'm representing Vermont teachers. I want $25 million. And we'd say, well, what about 10? There's like this process that doesn't seem to be happening here.
Well, typically we respond to bills, Senator, and so there is no bill.
Okay.
And this is a new concept generally because we usually bargain with our employer, who
Uh-huh.
is not the state. So,
But you see the opportunity here and,
yeah.
okay,
I mean,
we
one
can
of the things
take
I
it.
would say-
That's
one of the
totally
things I
fine.
would say, Senator, we've had a pension discussion for over a year now. And I think, the Appropriations Committee and Senate Gov Ops are working on something. Support that, because the fear of losing their pension was very real for teachers. And I think that that would go a long way towards shoring up that aspect of the anxiety that some teachers are feeling. Should you have a loan forgiveness program for teachers and educators? Because it's more than just teachers. Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Maybe, if you're suggesting $25 million might be the right number, I'd go with that. Yes, please.
Senator Chittenden.
So I'm inclined to propose when we get back to miscellaneous bill to add a new section for tax credit, because I think that sort of threads the needle, and it might be something that if there's money out there. How many teachers do you represent, Jeff? Is it 14,000?
Well, we have about 13,000 members,
Okay.
but that also includes support staff, paraeducators, bus drivers, kitchen workers, etc. So it's not all teachers.
Nurses.
Yeah.
School nurses, yes.
So high end, if we
Yeah,
doubled the
teachers,
federal
though,
tax
Senator,
credit, that's $3.5 million max if everybody claimed it. And so I think that money's out there. And if the committee wants to add some language on that with the miscellaneous bill, I'd be supportive of it. Then Jeff can react to it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
I mean,
We'll get him back in.
look. I mean, the reason that Senator Chittenden that money is there in the federal program is because of the assumption is teachers spend at least $250 annually buying supplies for their schools.
Yeah.
And why should they pay from their own wallet
Yep.
for public school supplies? And I think the vast majority of people, I think I've heard numbers of over $1,000. Most teachers are spending more than $1,000. So if we want to get real about this, that may be a more realistic number for teachers who are spending money out of their own pocket, and paraeducators, and bus drivers and others, right? But why don't we? The schools need to have these supplies. Why are teachers having to pay for this out of their own pocket to begin with? That's the larger question, I think.
And last thing, it's just been $250 forever. I mean, and it doesn't account for inflation. And my wife and we spend a lot more than $250 a year on that stuff.
I'm sure you do, and thank you and thank her.
Yeah. Other questions on student loan debt relief and or standardized tests or anything else from Mr. Fanning? Yes, Senator Hooker.
I was reading the paper this morning about loosening up of the ARPA funds and wondering if there are federal funds that could go towards either retention bonuses or whatever.
I believe they can be used for that.
So-
There are some restrictions to it. If they loosen up, that might be better. I think there are ways to do it, and to hire staff, right? I mean, one of the things is schools are desperate for people to work in the classrooms, in the schools, to drive buses.
If Senator Lyons were here, she would say, and for mental health workers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Schools. So, these are things that we can look at.
I mean, COVID has, I think I've said this to this committee before, it's been a challenging 3 school years, and this is the most challenging of the 3 school years by far, I've heard. And so I think anything we can do to help educators in the classrooms and in the schools and driving the buses and serving food, we should do. And if that's hiring more people using ARPA money, that's permissible. Different work and retention bonuses, perhaps. There are ways to do this that comply with ARPA, that we can make it happen. But if they make it more flexible, all the better.
Great. Any other questions from Mr. Fannin at this point? we will pursue a conversation with BSAC and work on some things for you to respond to, as well as we'll have AOE in to talk a little bit about standardized testing and where they're at, and see if we can at least weigh in and hopefully push again for some kind of congressional federal action.
Thank you for that. That would be much appreciated. And if it does happen, I think teachers would be happy.
I think it's the right thing for sure. Yeah. Senator Hooker.
Have you shared the letter with us, Jeff, that you've written?
He sent it to me, and I don't know if you've sent it around to anybody else.
I didn't, but I'm happy to if you'd like.
I can send it to Daphne and she can circulate it, the draft.
Okay. It was, I took the liberty of putting it to you, Senator Campion.
Thank you.
On the issue, and if it doesn't suit your needs, by all means, feel free to add it.
We'll take a look and we'll adjust. We'll work with Ledge Council and again, just have folks in to talk a little bit about it. We'll see if the House might want to also be a part of this as well.
All the better. Yes.
Any other comments from you, Mr. Fannin, at this point?
No, I don't think
You're
so.
coming back tomorrow on weighting and a number of other things, a couple other things.
The school age bill.
School age, yep, as
Weighting.
well as, yep. So,
I will see
okay.
that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Until then, have a good evening and we'll see you tomorrow.
Take care, all. Good night.
Thanks. Thanks.